Cool.
Okay, so we're here on, it's Wednesday morning in Perth. We've had the West Coast Downwinder on Sunday. We had the Sunset Series 1 last night, and that was a fun race in the wind. And I'm here, it's Tim from World Paddle. We're Paddle Travel, Training and Logistics, and I'm here with Rob Mousley from www.surfskiinfo, which most people in the surf ski world know of. It's been around for a long time, and Rob does a bunch of things on that website. It's probably I think one of the most well-known sources of information in surf ski paddling. So welcome, Rob.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to be here, and yeah, I had a ball so far.
It's been an amazing week.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah.
So like the field is just, it's got to be the hottest field. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's partly what Shaw & Partners have done with this, in sponsoring the week. It's created an added incentive. In fact, I was talking just to Tommy Norton a few minutes ago,
Yep.
and he was saying that he likes to get here earlier in the week just to get used to the conditions, because he's from the East Coast and it's very different here.
Yeah.
So he was really enjoying doing these couple of races just to get the feel of this style of paddling here, where you're working left the whole time and working the waves. But he also said that another major added incentive was the 35 grand bonus for the series win.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can thank Shaw & Partners for that.
It's been great. And I feel the same. I've always struggled a little bit if I came here. A few times I came here on the Thursday morning, race Thursday night, and then the doctor, and it was really hard. So to come here early and do a few paddles and get used to the wind and these conditions, it's been good.
Yeah, and the feel of this last section, not to be too far out, not to be too close in. Yeah.
And one of the things I love about ocean ski paddling, or some of the races when we do, packages for the Molokai and that, and particularly is that people sort of stay in a similar area, and there's a hub that people catch up. And here at this, we're all saying it, a lot of people are at the Quality Resort, and so this is the hub.
Yeah, it's great. You're just walking around, you bump into all these legends, and you can talk to them. Yeah,
you have breakfast with people, and it's really cool. So it's been a good week.
Yeah, there are a couple of races like that.
Yeah.
Mauritius is one. Oscar's race in Portugal is another. And it works really well.
Molokai,
yeah.
So tell us a bit more. How long ago did Surfskiinfo start, and
Sure.
why did you start it?
So, actually, I didn't start it.
Really?
At the time, I was putting some stories together. There was a news group, Yahoo group, with some paddlers in the States. And I was getting into paddling, and I had a couple of mishaps, and I started to write about it, and I was posting on this little news group. And then a friend of mine, who became a friend of mine, Alan Jacques in Cape Town, he had just started paddling, and he was a bit of a techie, and he looked around on the internet for information on this sport that he wanted to start, and he could find absolutely nothing. So he said, bugger that, I'm going to start a website. So he created Surfski.info, but then he had a problem because he's not a writer and he had no content to put on it. So he looked around, saw my stuff on the news group, and asked me if I wouldn't mind if he published a couple of stories on his website. So I said, take the lot. And and so we teamed up, and that was the start of it. I think that was in 2005.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
that's early days for ocean paddling.
Yeah. So in those days, I mean, I think there were when we started the first, we started our own little World Series, a virtual World Series, where we just took results of other races and came up with a point system. I think there were really only maybe 6 big races in the world. So I think we had King of the Harbour in New Zealand. We had the Doctor. We put Molokai in there. And at the time, we were doing World Cup races in South Africa, and the US champs, and that was about it. And it was it was a lot of fun. And as you say, at the time, it was pretty much the only source of information. And we started doing reviews and all of that sort of stuff.
So that's what I was going to say. What do you do? You obviously do reviews, craft reviews.
Do reviews. A lot of I'm passionate about safety in surf ski. So I take my hat off to guys who paddle in the Northern Hemisphere and have to wear pogies and dry suits and all of that sort of stuff. We're not there, but we still have quite cold water, and we go, I think, probably further offshore. We're in Cape Town. So even our little 11.5 kilometre Miller's Run, we're a good 2 kilometres out to sea, and we get some pretty wild conditions. And we've had a lot of incidents in South Africa over the years, and so we've built up a lot of experience when it comes to safety and rescue and stuff.
While we're talking about that, because that's become something very close to my heart and to our heart. I'm from Torquay, which is the bottom of mainland Australia on the east, and like right now the water's 14 degrees, and that's warming up, so it's it gets down as low as 10 in winter.
That's killer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not as bad as some of the crew from the northern hemisphere, but it's still cold.
Yeah.
And we get conditions, we get open ocean swells like you guys get, and we've had some incidents. We've lost one of our brothers, and it's very close to our heart, and we're realizing that we need to come and be on the front foot with safety to make sure that we don't have government create legislation that's foolish.
Yep.
And also because we want to have a good time and we want to feel safe, so it's a big one.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk further about that.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that it's getting better safety wise now?
Yeah. As technology progresses, we make use of it. So typically at home, we all do the basics, and the basics are now forced on us by Canoeing South Africa.
Yeah.
So any CSA affiliated race, the basics, you have to have a PFD, you have to have a leash, you have to have some sort of communication device.
Yeah.
And at home, Safe Tracks works very well, and we're using Safe Tracks for this race as well. So typically, most guys will have Safe Tracks. Everybody will be wearing a PFD. Everybody will be wearing an ankle leash. I use a belt leash for reasons. I actually use a paddle leash as well, usually so that I can let my paddle go to help somebody else.
We've got a few guys who do that.
Yeah. And then, some of us are beginning to use other things. We had a not such a positive experience with the PLB a little while ago, and we've got quite a long chain of communication to get the message from the PLB to the people who actually do the rescue.
Yeah.
So for me, where I paddle, the VHF, and I brought my radio with me for the paddle, it works incredibly well because we have VHF repeaters in the mountains around the thing, so the line of sight is not a problem. So it's incredibly easy to use. You just press a button and talk, and so that works really well for us.
Okay.
But trackers and Safe Tracks is actually coming out with an independent sort of wristwatch with Safe Tracks built into it. So I think that
could be great.
Is something worth looking at as well.
Another one we're starting to do as a result of some experience is must wear a high vis hat. It's all well and good to wear a high vis PFD. If you're in the water, your PFD is not visible. It must be high vis hat, and must carry a peeless whistle.
Yep.
Because if you're in the water and your flare must be in your life jacket, not on your ski. And so we're sort of, there are a couple of little things that are not much, but if you're in the water, someone could come within a few meters of you and not see you. So having the peeless whistle, so you can, if you're tired, it's hard to yell out. So it's having that ability to be heard and seen. If you've lost your ski is fundamental.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, okay, well that's great.
And another thing that we're doing a lot of back home, a couple of guys are making high-vis vinyl stickers that we put onto our skis.
And on paddles.
Yeah. So, because we did a search and rescue exercise with our National Sea Rescue Institute crew in Simonstown quite a few years ago now. But there was some really interesting stuff. They sent a chopper to come out and play with us. And we got permission to fire off a couple of flares, and we tested the radios and cell phones and stuff. Because there's always the debate between a smoke flare and pencil flares. And what we found, actually, the helicopter found the pencil flares really effective even in the daytime because they leave a smoke trail. So the flare itself only lasts for about 5 seconds, but it leaves like a marker in the sky pointing at the guy in the water, as long as he doesn't fire them all too soon. So always keep one for when you can see your rescuer.
So if anyone was watching this, there's some gold here, in terms of, I think, and I know Indian Ocean paddlers here in Perth are having to deal with that with their government. And so I think it's fortunately for them, the water's a lot warmer, so there's more time for them to
Makes
get
a big
rescued.
difference.
We had a thing recently where a couple of our paddlers got caught in a nasty wind change, and very, very strong offshore breezes came that were a lot more than forecast suggests. And one of them couldn't paddle against it, and so they ended up having to turn their craft upside down. The water was 13.5, so they ended up sitting on top of their surf skis, and she had used our little WhatsApp group, pinpointed her location from WhatsApp,
Right.
and that went to our group. So we're sitting at home going, what's going on? And then a little message said 000, and we went, we know what that means.
Yeah.
So straight away, and she had a PLB, or an EPIRB, so she was did that as well. But that sent about a dozen people into action straight away.
Yes.
And it was really cool. So it wasn't Safe Tracks, but it was
same technology.
same technology, and that was really cool. And what she did was awesome. And then our local Coast Guard and the Marine Rescue, our government Marine Rescue, and that were actually, once the dust had settled and they did their interviews, they were like, wow, these people are onto it. And they actually interviewed her, and she described what she understood of reading weather maps as well. So they were like, okay, so this is not foolish.
Yeah.
So, okay. What about in terms of ocean ski racing in general? So if you've started in 2005, it's certainly grown. Where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think what's really nice is, the major growth in the sport, I think, is in Europe.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. And it's funny. There's been a huge change over the years as well. Several years. The French are a great maritime nation. They've always had fantastic sailors and what have you. Yeah. And but we had a couple of races back in the day where French teams got into trouble. We had a massive race in Durban in 2007, where we had a 30-knot buster come through with big ocean swell, and in fact, in that race, I think there were 40 DNFs, and a lot of boats that were lost altogether. And shame the French team were completely wiped out. They were gone. Similar thing happened in our World Cup in Cape Town. We didn't have the wind, but we had leftover storm swell, and it was massive, and there were bommies breaking where we'd never seen them break before. And there were a lot of rescues, but no serious difficulties. And again, shame the French team in particular. They were real gung ho, but they got taken out. And then for a while, in the races in France, they had all kinds of weird regulations. You had to have a tow rope on the boat and a compass and all kinds of crazy things. But the French paddlers eventually got the authorities to change, and where they'd had to have one escort boat per 5 boats, and they could only paddle in the harbour if it was above 10 knots, and all this kind of stuff. Those guys are absolutely hardcore now. They're full-on proper downwind paddlers. You go to the Breeze Open race, they have proper rough weather there, and they just go for it. When we get guests coming out to Cape Town and doing the Miller's Run and stuff, and it's been so cool to see this change from a totally safety conscious flat water paddling to outrageous full-on, just as good as anybody else in the world. Wow. And and that's happening all over Europe. So you've got big downwind races in the Netherlands, Germany, Portugal, Spain. Same thing in Spain. The Euro Challenge race is one of the biggest races in Europe. And when they started off, it was the same thing. That the authorities were absolutely petrified. They would have a so-called waiting period, and they would actually choose the calmest day. But that again has the last couple of Euro Challenges, they've had proper downwind conditions. And
we found out when we set up World Paddle, and got on Instagram and things, and Surfski Croatia, and all huge in Spain and France and Netherlands, Scandinavia, and you're just going, wow. Yeah, it was amazing, just to see, and South America is bigger than we thought too. So, so the future, I think the future, the future is bright. I think we've still got this interesting political divide between ICF and the rest of the world, but to me, it's all positive. The ICF races, the ICF World Championships,
everybody goes there.
Yeah.
You know, and they get an incredible field, and they get an incredible field of masters paddling as well. And the guys behind the ICF racing, they're also just as enthusiastic about downwind paddling.
Great.
So, you know, I think eventually things will, and in any case, there's no, to me, having this week here, I think is huge. And I think that's part of the future is to move away from like a single race on a single day to have a festival. Yeah, I mean, and we've seen it in the Gorge. We're hoping to do something in Cape Town again.
Well, that was my next question.
Where we'll have a
South Africa. That's the missing link, because
yeah,
it's really been the father of the sport, South Africa, in that sense that
a couple of the oldest races came from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and Cape Town is the obvious place to do it because the wind blows so reliably and so strongly. You know, we could have a week of Miller's runs, and then take the exhausted guys and see who's so
okay.
But yeah, so and you know, opinions vary also, but to me downwind is the essence of surfski, and I hope you know, a race, for example, like the Dragon Run, where you have to paddle out and then you have to paddle back in again from the, you know, to me that's fine. If you're going to paddle upwind or on flat water and you're going to do a downwind, you know, that's, you know, not everybody's got a coastline that lines up with the wind.
No, they don't.
So that's totally acceptable. Just as long as we never become sort of ocean marathon paddling. If that would, but I don't think there's any real danger of that.
Us old guys would pull out in those
exactly,
cases anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. And how about you paddling wise? And I mean, why do you still paddle? Or how long have you been paddling, and why do you still paddle?
So I started around about 2002, 2003, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was funny. I have a sailing background, so I grew up dinghy sailing, and I was the East African Fireball champion for a while for my sins, and you know, it was beautiful. We used to sail on the Kenya coast, and I was just warm tropical water, and you know, 20 knot trade winds, and it was just for the 505s and the Fireballs. It was just absolutely ideal. But then I went to Cape Town to university, and at the time with apartheid and so on, there was no international racing, and also the water was bloody cold. I sailed I crewed on yachts for a season out of Royal Cape Yacht Club, and it was, you know, I was a student with no proper oilies and stuff, and I was hanging on the rail with a pair of jeans, and it was just miserable. And then I had a really good friend who was into expensive sports, and he got me into one season into windsurfing. And so I bought a second-hand rig, and I was just getting into it, and he got moored and moved on, and I think he went to do flying or something. I don't know, it's too expensive for me. And eventually one day he called me up and said, I've got a new thing. It's a thing called a surf ski. And I said, no, that sounds expensive. You're going to buy a boat. And he said, no, you must come and try it. And eventually I did. And what he'd got was an old chalup ski.
Oh, yeah.
So we were in a spot, and I got into this thing and took about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes to get out through the surf, and I got hammered, and eventually I got out and I was chuffed. I paddled out a bit, and I thought, okay, this was quite good fun. And then I felt the back of the ski lift up, and cool, I'm on a run. And of course the nose dipped in, and I pitch poled and actually smashed the rudder off the boat, and I was hooked. And then so for the next 18 months, this guy dragged me out, and I had a really steep learning curve. I got an old wedge ski. Yeah. And he took me out, and it didn't matter what the weather was, he took me out, and I scared the hell out of me. But I had a steep learning curve, got into it, and then we had that. I bought a thing called a Molokai, which was made under license. It was an Australian design made under license in Cape Town. And then we had our first World Cup in Cape Town. Yeah. And it just went on from there, and I got onto a Miller's Run, and
Awesome.
Downwind is where it's at. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, we've got a group of about 25 here, and we've got similar numbers going to Molokai next year, and a lot of them are just getting into it, and they're just all over it. They just love downwind. You know, there's some of them are learning. We've got to really work with them, but it's just been fantastic to see their enthusiasm. That's the sport. I love it. I always say there are the brats. We grew up paddling when we were kids through lifesaving and that.
Yeah.
But most of this sport is people who are getting into it and, you know, intermediate paddlers and just love downwind and, you know, love the buzz and the enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whilst a lot of people focus on the winners of races, there's the races within the races.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean,
So good.
there's a New Zealand guy put me by about 3 seconds in the West Coast, and I was after him last night, but he didn't paddle, so I took that one by default.
Yeah, I was chatting to the guys, and there's so many of them. I focused on I beat this guy and that guy, and what we were saying just before we started, the over 50s, the first 5 guys were within a minute, and you could see everyone, and it was a real stoush last night in the over 50s, and it was, and we got to the end and said, what is it with this, you know? And it was, you know, people sort of telling us there isn't. In the end, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter who won or who did what. It was great to be racing together and you know sharing leads and get in front, and then he catches you and he gets in front. It's like, you know, it's really good.
It's the same thing with our Miller's run. You know, everybody always says, oh, I'm just going to go off and do a mellow run, and you go around the corner and you eyes red over and. Yeah, it's great fun.
Oh, well, thanks for that today. We could talk all day.
We could, yeah.
But we won't. Maybe there's going to be more. I think there'll be more. There's so much we could talk about. So I'll definitely do some when we catch up at races, and then we'll do some more interviews. But we'll call it a day today. Thank you for your time.
Oh, pleasure.
It's been a really fun chat.
Yeah. Oh well, I've had an absolute gas here so far.
Yeah. And if you're ever considering watching this and you haven't been to the WA Race Week or the Doctor, come along. It's great fun, and there's some, you know, it's awesome. And you know, if you need help with logistics, then Paddle can help you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's incredible is, you just have to put up your hand, and half a dozen people will help you here. It's an incredibly friendly bunch, and you've got there's a taxi here as well, just like at home. And we could talk about that as well. Cool.
All right, great. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.